Hello again and welcome to ManchTalk. I'm Tammy Simmons. I'm your host and I'm glad you're tuning in. The weather's great. Summer has been really, really good this year. You know, compared to last year, I don't think we had such a great summer last year. But we really can't complain much this year. Been super, super hot. I mean, almost too hot. And we're just now going into August, so we still have at least another 4 weeks of good hot summer left in us before we still have September, which can be also a beautiful month. And hopefully we have a nice long autumn season. Maybe some Indian summer would be nice right in the middle of October. I want to talk a couple things today. There's an article in the paper about the DuPont splash pad, which is located up near Northwest Elementary School, which I think is on maybe on Mason Street, up near Rock Rimmon, where the big rock is. Below that is where the DuPont pool used to be, and it's now the DuPont splash pad. As you've heard me say before, I personally don't think taxpayers should be the only ones funding any of the pools or Crystal Lake or the splash pad here in the city. I do think that there should be some user fees involved. I think people using these facilities could pay a nominal fee, whether it's $1 a day or whatever, or buy a season pass to help offset the cost, because, you know, I'm not sure if my elderly neighbors should have to pay taxes to, you know, for a young family to be able to use a splash pad for free. But there was an article, and it was interesting about the usage at DuPont Pool and the Parks Department's opinions of this. So last year was the first year that the splash pad up at DuPont was open. It opened last May, and over the course of last year, there were 15,800 users. And when I say users, it's not actually individual users per se, just 15,800 attendants, people who went through the gate. Might be the same person who went through the gate every day all summer long, might account for part of that 15,800 from last year. So far this year, with the rest of August still left behind us, or in front of us, I guess, they're up to almost 11,000 users already. So it seems as though if the temperatures keep up, the attendance will probably surpass that of last year at the DuPont splash pad. I guess I'm glad to see that my taxpayers did provide a service that's being used, a perk that's being used. It did cost us about $450,000 to convert the old DuPont pool that was in need of repair to a splash pad. But it did save us, I guess, about $225,000. If we had chosen to repair the pool, it would have cost $225,000 above and beyond that $450,000. Another upside for the taxpayer for the splash pad versus a swimming pool is they don't have to have lifeguards at the splash pad, because there's no deep water for anybody to drown in. It's, you know, it's jets of water that come out of the ground and water that comes like this, and I guess there's a big bucket that pours down some slide or something. So it's a different type of atmosphere, not requiring the use of lifeguards, so we don't have to pay people to be at the DuPont splash pad as far as lifeguards go. They still have to have an attendant to, you know, check to make sure people, or at least I'm presuming they have an attendant to make sure that the people are residents during the times that the residents are allowed and so forth. I did find it interesting in the union leader, Parks and Rec Director Don Pinard said he's pushing for a splash pad at the Hunt Memorial Pool, which is over near JFK Arena on Maple Street. That pool is also aging and in need of renovation, so he says it's still in the planning stages, and that the proposed Hunt conversion would renovate the pool and add a new splash pad in the park. So that's a little bit different. That's not saying, well, the Hunt Memorial Pool is in need of repair, so instead of spending a large number to repair the pool, we're going to spend a smaller number and convert that pool into a splash pad, because we've seen success at DuPont on the west side. What this says to me is that they still want to spend the large amount of money to repair Hunt Memorial Pool, and then above and beyond that, build an entirely another splash pad. So if it costs us $450,000 to convert the old DuPont, so let's we're going to spend $450,000 to add, or more maybe, to add a splash pad, and then spend what, $600,000-$700,000 to repair Hunt Memorial Pool. This is why I don't think it's fair to the taxpayers that we solely fund this from tax dollars. I do think that even if it would only offset the cost of the lifeguards, even if it only offset the cost of the chemicals for these places, I do think that the people using them should be paying something above and beyond what the rest of the city is paying. If I go to the splash pad with my kids, not that I have kids, but every day, I think it's just fair to expect me to pay more than, say, an elderly neighbor who's never going to use the splash pad. I don't think we have a golf course in Manchester, a municipal golf course that people have to pay to use. We have the McIntyre ski area where people have to pay to use that. We have ice skating at JFK Arena in the wintertime, and people have to pay to use that. We've got an ice rink up on the west side that I don't even think has open skate anymore because it's so booked with hockey and whatnot. But we're expected to pay for all those other recreational items, but for some reason, we don't expect people to pay for the recreational item in the way of a swimming pool or a splash pad or Crystal Lake. So I just thought it was interesting. It was interesting the amount of users. They do say that they think that DuPont Splash Pad is alleviating some of the crowding at Livingston Park up in the North End. Livingston's beautiful. I mean, it's got a water slide and all sorts of things. But it's the big pool in the city, which is kind of ironic in a way because they always talk. A lot of times you hear aldermen say, well, we have to keep the pools free because it's the poorer kids that need some place to go to cool off and whatnot. And then our biggest pool with the most amenities is way up in the North End. Not exactly accessible by those kids that probably can't afford, that supposedly can't afford the fee to get in. I don't know how they're supposed to afford getting to the North End to get to this big pool. But anyways, that's enough about pools. Anybody who's watched my show or talked to me in the past knows that I support right to work legislation. I've voted for it in the past. I would vote for it again. I simply do not think that any individual should have to pay money to any organization that they do not wish to join. And this applies to unions as much as it would apply to the New Hampshire Audubon Society or the NRA. I do not think anybody should have to pay anything to the NRA if they do not want to join the NRA. If you don't want to join the Audubon Society, you shouldn't be forced by the government to join the Audubon Society. Now, anti-worker freedom individuals will contend that it's unfair that the union is required by law to negotiate for an entire class of employees. But they can't force those employees to have to join the union. So what they've negotiated is they cover all employees' negotiations, and then in turn they had created what's called an agency fee. And so as an employee, you're not forced to join the union. You can join the union and have union dues taken out, which say that are this much, or you could not join the union and we're just going to take out agency fees, which instead of being this much might be this much. So you're still forced to pay to the union, just not in the name of dues. It's a fee instead. And that's taken out of employees' paychecks, whether they want it taken out or not. So recently, the United States Supreme Court made a decision in the case of Janus versus the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, which we call AFSCME, AFSCME. When you see AFSCME, that's the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees. So that covers government employees. In that decision, they didn't say that it was unconstitutional to collect agency fees because you can't force people to pay into an organization that they don't want to be a member of. That isn't the way they looked at it. It wasn't about freedom of association in the sense that the decision said you can't force people to join a union. If it had, then that decision would have applied not only to public sector employees, government, it would have also applied to private sector employees, places like UPS or the plumbers or the electrical unions or FedEx or any other non-government union. There was an op-ed in this week's Union Leader, written by Ross Connolly and Laura Spottiswoode, two good friends of mine, that discussed the Janus decision. And it said in there that the court found that because collective bargaining with the government affects public policy issues like pension liabilities, taxes, spending, and more, it equates the collective bargaining action to lobbying and thus political speech. So the United States Supreme Court said that the unions negotiating benefits, pensions, etc., because in the public sector, because those benefits and those pensions are paid for by tax dollars, equates to lobbying for tax dollars and is considered political speech. Public employees are now protected from having their hard-earned money automatically deducted from their paycheck and directed towards political speech that they may disagree with. So the Janus decision is really just about that, not forcing anyone to pay for political speech that they don't agree with. Nobody's forced to pay dues to the NRA or give money to the NRA for them to promote pro-Second Amendment legislation. Nobody's forced to give money to, well, I guess we could debate this. No one is forced to give their private money to Planned Parenthood for them to lobby on behalf of abortion rights, whether if they don't agree with that. And now labor unions for public workers, for state employees, municipal employees, county employees, those unions cannot lobby in the way of union contracts for their form of legislation, which is in the form of the contract. Now, the unions will continue to contend that there are things called free riders. You hear about this all the time if you're up in Concord, free riders, because federal law, if I'm not mistaken, requires that the union negotiate on behalf of all employees of a certain classification. So if you're negotiating a teacher's contract, that contract, they're negotiating on behalf of all teachers, whether they're union members or not. And the unions seem to be, they didn't like that, they will not like that that federal law will require that they negotiate on behalf of all employees, but yet they are no longer going to be able to collect those agency fees for doing so. I, for one, when I get reelected, I will support right to work legislation. I will support making New Hampshire one of the first, making New Hampshire the first right to work state in the Northeast. I would also likely support legislation that relieves the unions of having to negotiate on behalf of non-union members. I have no problem with that. I don't think we should force the unions to negotiate for people who choose not to be associated with them. Now, that's not really what the unions want. The unions want more members, and they liked the agency fees because they add up to a lot of money. There was a report out this week from the Josiah Bartlett Center on Public Policy, and they talk about how many state employees there are and so on, which was kind of interesting. There are, let's do unions first. There are 7,051 members of unions in the public sector in New Hampshire. That's state, county, municipal that belong to a union. $7,051 7,051 individuals are members of the union. Each paycheck, and it's every 2 weeks, $160,764.13 is paid to those unions. Over an annual number, $4,178,827.38 is paid to the unions that negotiated the contracts for those 7,051 people. If you just take the lump numbers and divide it, that comes out to about $593 per year per employee. Now, agency fee employees, those who chose not to join the union, there are 2,161 non-union state employees, municipal, county, state, who opted not to join the union, but we're being required to pay those agency fees regardless. Per check, that was $37,913.60. So every 2 weeks, nearly $38,000 went to the unions. The SEA agency fee for courts, which I believe is the super low one, like they charge 0.8125% of base pay. The SEA agency fee is a flat amount calculated per employee. Teamsters agency fee is flat $11.75 per check. So even if you don't choose to join the Teamsters, but they negotiated your contract, you're going to pay them $11.75 every paycheck. Now, because of the Janus decision, which says that those non-union members are no longer required to pay those agency fees, the dollars just in New Hampshire for those 2,161 employees, which represent about 19.5 or 20% of the overall state employees, state, county, municipal. I'm not saying just people who work for the state. If they work for the city of Manchester, they work for Hillsborough County, government employees, municipal employees. About 20% of those employees chose not to join the union. And the total agency fees that will no longer be collected, taken from their paychecks, which I'm sure nobody, if you didn't join the union, you didn't really want to pay for the agency fees either. $1,012,055 a year. Over $1 million was being taken from New Hampshire employees' paychecks against their will, and this Supreme Court decision has now changed that. That means that $1 million, because that $1 million is money that they didn't have last week, or last month, or before the Janus decision recently. That $1 million is money that can get spent on New Hampshire's economy. That's money that can go towards shopping in small businesses. That's money that can go towards eating out in restaurants, which generates meals and rooms taxes. That could be money that's used towards kids' education. $1 million is a lot of money to not have extorted from people who did not want to join a union. Now, interestingly enough, because I am pro right to work, and as I've said, I would vote to make New Hampshire the first right to work state in the Northeast. In states that have become right to work, their union membership actually goes up, which might seem odd because if it became right to work and you're no longer obligated, why wouldn't union membership go down? Well, the fact is, it's not unlike school choice. Worker freedom is not unlike education freedom. In the states that are right to work, those unions have to offer value in order to entice people to join their unions. So they don't just take your union dues and not do anything for you. They actually have to be advocates for those employees. They have to offer benefits that those employees actually want. They, whether that's life insurance or AFLAC or whatever the case may be, those unions, in order to attract those members, have to actually have something of value. They have to compete for those employees to join. The same thing happens in education. When you see more educational freedom and more educational choices, what that does is actually put the burden on the public school to be more competitive. Over time, public schools will have to adapt and become more competitive so that they can attract more students to stay in the public school system, just like the unions have to attract more employees to join their unions. It's the same concept. It's all about freedom and allowing people the free choice to make those decisions for themselves rather than the government forcing folks to do things that they might not want. So I'm happy to know that New Hampshire's economy will have $1 million more than it did last year, and it'll be interesting to see what legislation comes out of this next term at the State House. And if right to work is one of those bills or other labor union related legislation. Enough about that. Things to do. Don't forget Thursdays in downtown. Apparently Thursday is the day. Note to those watching, if you're an alderman and you think we should close down Elm Street, perhaps it should be on a Thursday, since that's apparently when everything happens on Elm Street. Free summer concert series continues on August 2nd. You have the Army Rock Band, and on August 16th, Manchester School Committee member Jimmy LaHoo and his band will be playing down there for free, 7 p.m. Thursday evenings in Veterans Park. That's the one with the big yellow tent. The park's open at 6. The concerts start at 7. After the 16th, starting on the 23rd, there'll be a couple movie nights, also on Thursday nights, also free and starting at 7 p.m. In Veterans Park. August 23rd, they have The Greatest Showman, and on August 30th, they have The Avenger. Also on Thursdays is the Farmers Market, which takes place now in Stanton Plaza every Thursday from 3 to 6:30. So apparently Thursdays are the day to go downtown. You can catch a free concert. You can go to the farmer's market. You can just stroll up Elm Street, stop and visit one of the great establishments there. You've got A&R Workshop that you can paint your own wooden signs for your home. You've got Boards and Brews where you can have a bite to eat, have a coffee or a beer, and play a board game that you maybe never have tried before. There's all sorts of great places. Bridge Street Cafe, which is up at the top of Elm Street, has really good coffee, amazing sandwiches. Pacola is on Elm Street. You've got Matba. You've got I can never remember the name of the cowboy bar that during happy hour has free bacon. Just stop and have an ice cream at Ben & Jerry's. So many great places right there on Elm Street. There's also shopping, and it's just a great, I'm glad to see downtown Manchester doing so well. You can get more information about the farmers market, about the concert series, the movie series, by visiting intownmanchester.com. Also on Thursday nights, the Sea Science Center sponsors trolleys. They have 2 trolleys that do a loop. They start, I believe, at 6, but don't quote me on that. I don't have it in here. They do a loop that talks about the different cultural and art things. There's 10 different stops. There's a art market, special exhibits, shopping, music, and so on. You can jump on and off the trolley for free at any of these different stops to check out the arts and culture in and around downtown Manchester, and it'll probably get you from one end of Elm Street to the other. You can get more information about that and other great things that happen at the Sea Science Center by visiting sea-sciencecenter.org. That's SEE-sciencecenter.org. Also, Sundays in the summer, there are free concerts up at Stark Park. You can get a list of all of those at starkpark.com. Coming up on August 6th, it's Damn Tall Buildings. That starts Sunday in Stark Park at 2 p.m. And then on August 12th, they have the Wolverine Jazz Band, and then there's a few more listed after that. Again, that's starkpark.com. Lastly, I wanted to mention, if you're a Republican or a Republican-like minded undeclared, and you'd like to help support the Manchester Republican Committee, we have one of our annual events coming up on Wednesday, August 15th. It'll be I'm not sure if it's our 5th or 6th annual Tiki fundraiser that takes place over at Casey's Rib Shack out on his patio. Over there, Kevin Cornish has always been a good friend of ours, and we have an event. Tickets currently are $45. We have a barbecue buffet, and you get a free cocktail. And it's just a great way to support the Manchester Republican Committee and help get limited government types elected this November here in Manchester. We've got 31 people running for state rep, and we've got state senators, and we've got to re-elect Governor Sununu, and you can come on out and chat with us and have a delicious dinner, and your efforts will help elect some people here in Manchester. That's all I really have. If you have any questions for me or any ideas for shows or any input on anything I said, please, by all means, email me at manchtalk@gmail.com. You can also follow me on Facebook, and I have a YouTube channel. I take these videos that Manchester Public Television films for me, and I upload them to YouTube and share them on Facebook. So if you happen to miss a show, or you saw a show and you want to go back and watch it again or share it with a friend, you can find me at ManchTalk on Facebook or on YouTube, and you can do it that way. That's all I have for this week. Get out there, enjoy the summer. We've got another month left, but don't let time slip away. I know I'm going camping this weekend, so I'm definitely taking advantage of the warmer weather. I will see you again next week. Have a safe one. Bye.